Before the weekend started, we went out to our friend Lupe Voss, and she did this beautiful color on this Lana mannequin for Pivot Point. And today I'm going to be teaching a haircut on behalf of our friends at Pivot Point on this beautiful Lana. Lana's already like pre-lightened when you get her, so you can do all this fun fashion color. Lupe here used an oxidative color to do this beautiful fashion color. Kind of a, I guess, is it a tangerine? It's just a real pretty
electric tangerine.
Electric tangerine. Now, if you want to see that lesson, the actual color lesson, just jump on our Facebook page, which you're already on, click the live button in the menu, and you can see all the lives. We've done probably about 700 of them at this point. But if you want to see how she achieved this using color space color. The mannequin was already cut, and it's a nice cut. Let's be honest, it looks real pretty. It's got a lot of texture just on the ends, kind of in a conventional way. But when I look at it, I think it could just be opened up and have more space in it. And I wanted to just show you sometimes where I can pop in triangles, and rather than just pointing into the ends, use a dry cutting technique that I call slicing. Most people call it that anyway. So the first place really is when I look, because, you know, as you would do, you'd kind of layer here and you let all this drop out. So all this from the middle down in the back is quite solid and heavy. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to put in one of these triangle shapes from about the top of the occipital bone to the base of the ear. And I'll do that on the other side so that you guys can see. And you know, a lot of feeling involved here. I know that the length and the general feeling of this shape I kind of already like. I just want to kind of take bulk away. And you know, people do things for different reasons, but for me, I tend to work on damper hair when I want to really make a lot about shape, lines, even shape that has soft ends. And then I tend to work on dry hair when I really want to take away a lot of weight and add a lot of movement to the hair. So coming through here, I'm gonna grab this, and you can see really how solid that is. Like that layering from the top almost doesn't affect this at all. So it's basically one length in a major way. So I'm gonna use what you've probably seen me do this many times, back cutting. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna open and close without closing all the way. And I'll also use some slicing. What I'm trying to do is put some micro layering on top of this without like overly layering it. So it should still disappear, but it should have a bit more movement. I can refine that using a little bit of slicing as well on the top and from the sides. So really carving here. Carving in a way that I'm, you know, hopefully you can see that difference there between what's next to it and then what's in the center right here. So opening the hair up to give it some movement. Come back through. Let's bring this out. I'm gonna bring it back square so that I don't lose the bob behind the ears. Closing the scissor as I go in without closing all the way. Making sure that that scissor is kind of really parallel with the floor and working my way through.
Now, what's the difference between going in as you're going now and then coming in later when you refined it coming from on top? What's the difference?
I think it just creates a different amount of texture and movement in the hair. I think it's, you know, again, questions like that can be a little tricky because it's a lot of feeling. I don't know that it's a technical, easy to describe difference. But it's like the movement of the blade. In this case, it's going with it. So it's a little bit more gentle, more kind of refining. And I think definitely softer, where working like this can definitely, for me, when I do it, I feel more aggressive, like I can take more weight out. But, you know, with these kind of free form techniques, it's gonna feel different for everyone. And that's one of the things I love about it. Working a little more just on the ends. At a lower elevation. And then, you know, basically like if I see any kind of weight on the top, I can gently kind of make it more invisible, just kind of skimming and moving. Now these are dry cutting scissors. These are the HB Pro Dry. So they kind of push the hair as they cut. That's what typically dry scissors are designed to do, is push the hair as they cut so that you don't get any sharp lines in the actual cut. I tend to use these a lot on lots of things. I use them on wet hair too. And it's definitely one of our most popular. These, as well as all of our scissors and all of our pro tools at HB Hairbrain Pro, are on sale 20% off for this Memorial Day kind of week sale. As I mentioned earlier, I'm working on the Lana mannequin. So this is a mannequin. What's great about this, first of all, it's made by Pivot Point. So you know its quality, its integrity, it's made well. It's got great human hair, so you can really practice your craft and really kind of get predictable results because you're working with beautiful human hair. And it's pre-lightened quite a bit when it already comes. If you go to the website, if you just go to Pivot Point International website, you can see, not being a colorist, I can't say, but it's like a level 10 or something. It's quite light, but still has a lot of integrity to it, so that you're able to practice your vivid colors, practice your kind of toning. It's a really awesome benefit where you don't have to spend time trying to pre-lighten the mannequin so that you can try stuff like that.
Lori was wondering, although you may have done it a couple times already, maybe slower, she was wondering if you can show us how you did that on the ends again.
Sure. So as I come through, I just lift and I open and close on the way in without closing all the way. Close on the way in without closing all the way.
Is there a start point that you should be mindful of? Maybe you don't want to go too high up the hair shaft, or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's really up to you. I mean, you know, the thing is, usually if the closer you get to the root, the more chance that it can jump up. But you have to know the hair and the hair type and the hair texture, you know, and really what you're going for. Sometimes you could probably go closer, but you have to use, you know, that's the thing with every haircut you do, you bring in every bit of knowledge that you have. So yes, you might go, oh, I want to stay away from getting too close to the root here because I think that hair is going to get jumpy or steppy or look too hollowed out. Or you might feel really comfortable going closer. You know, it depends. Never say never, because you never know. And I mean, I do think you have to have a real understanding of hair, weight, shape. I still believe before you do any of this type of cutting, you should definitely spend time learning the fundamentals, the basics, geometric hair cutting, precision hair cutting, still the most valuable thing. The rest of this is really just, you know, things to kind of change it up for you, change up the way hair moves. But again, because this hair was already cut, I didn't cut the basic shape. I don't know, maybe Lupe cut it or one of her team. It just had a nice kind of triangular layer that was texturized on the ends. It makes this so much easier. And you know, to be honest, you know, you could have done that wet and then come in and start to do this. Or you can just, you know, go right into this. I believe in freedom for everyone to do what they need to do. So I feel like we've collapsed that in a good way, taken out the bubbliness. Let's move up. So, you know, it's always about being able to panel off, you know, because it's a lot of hair to work with, especially dry. So as I come through here, now I'm going to take another panel, coming from the crown towards the face. And again, you see the same thing kind of happening here. Like this has a lot of layers in it. This is, you know, fairly typical. You get a lot of layers on the top and you get a lot of weight through the bottom. So, I mean, that could be kind of part of your strategy. The hair, after the hair is damp, I put my basic layered shape in. It's got balance, it's got control. And then I want to really kind of do what we used to call the finishing or the refining when the hair is dry. Or someone, you know, people come in and maybe they don't need a lot of length off or a shape change. And very often you can do this kind of thing right away. I want to change this a little bit. I want to start to kind of work from the underneath. So we've got that bottom working from the top. Here I want to work from the underneath so that I can keep the length building towards the inside, but remove weight, get movement. And I think what it'll also do is give a little bit more roundness. See how it's kind of giving that bend there? So what I did on the underneath kind of collapsed it in the sense of kind of like a concave. Is obviously shortest on the top, longer on the bottom. Here is kind of like an extreme graduation in a way. By coming through and working from the underneath, the shortest piece is underneath, and you're working longer and longer towards the top in a nice controlled way, you're making kind of a more extreme idea of graduation. And again, you can start to see the difference, just those two sections from there to there, what that does. And I think it's really starting to complement the color, because I know this lesson had a lot to do with hue and dimension. So you can see there's different dimensions of this tangerine color. Let some of that outline drop away. You can either pinch it or hold it in your fingers. And I like to do a lot of my dry work pinching the hair. It just feels comfortable and natural to me, rather than trying to hold it in my fingers like when I'm cutting technically. So I comb. I'm using a dry cutting comb. This is the Primp comb. You know what makes it a dry cutting comb? It's just a bit longer from the spine to the teeth, and it's got like a little deeper grooves here. So you get, sometimes when you're cutting dry with maybe your favorite precision cutting comb, it feels like the hair is hard to grasp because it's dry and it falls away, and you're not getting the same amount of control and tension that you'd like, or lack of tension. So, you know, if you haven't tried, notice I do let the outline fall out here on the sides. I don't start slicing right on the outline, because I feel like I could lose some of the length. It tends to get a little weaker.
Are you starting to cut this section at the same point in the shaft where you cut your first section?
You could say that, you know, every single one of these has a similar starting point. I don't necessarily have a guideline from one section to the next. I have a starting point visually in mind, and I try to work it that way. And again, it's such a subtle thing, but look at the difference. I know, like, see the clunkiness here of just kind of basic layering, and then the refinement and the movement and the texture. And then you want to, you know, evaluate and see if you want to do a little more. You want to look for that bend. Up. You know, and again, this is where your experience and your eye comes in. I'm going to go through the whole thing again one more time, but nice and light. And I'm going to do it from the front to the back. I did back to front, and now front to back. You know, that's just to give me the same kind of momentum and movement on both sides. You know, very simple, using the right tools, trying to just create space and movement in the hair. Underneath, I worked from the top out to collapse and take away a lot more bulk. Now working from the bottom in to create that roundness and movement and swing in the shape. I am working with a little bit of product as I go to help me see. I'm using a little of the texturizing serum from our friends at Davines. Just a little drop. You know, I will say this, a lot of mannequin from our friends at Pivot Point, you know, for such high lifted hair, it's still so workable. You know, so they managed to send it to you already lifted to a very light, you know, kind of pale blonde that you can then play with these fun tones, or you can do vivids, your rainbows, or whatever it might be, corrective color, or learning to do tint backs. Look how nicely that worked. That's a great little product. I haven't worked with it that much before, so excited to play with it a bit. Yeah, so check it out. If you're, you know, for your color lessons, if you need something that's already been lifted and lightened, and you know, you're afraid that, hey, if I have to put this mannequin, you know, because a lot of the darker mannequins, the hair's been colored darker. So we all know how challenging it is to remove color, dark color, single process tint, and you know, we use it a lot in our lessons. We use them on HB Live, our online academy, which is also having a nice Memorial Day sale on 1 year subscriptions. Looks like my dog is deciding to check out the hair.
Just don't let him eat the clip.
Where's the clip? Don't eat the clip. No. Don't eat the clip. Eat the hair, not the clip. Okay, so you can see again, vertical sections, letting the bottom drop out, thinking, you know, really visualizing where I started. And again, you know, if you're unsure, you can always start out a little further. You can always play it safe. There's nothing wrong with playing it safe. You know, and then go back and push it a little bit further. Come up. Some of that outline drop away. Working from the underneath. You know, so the idea on the bottom, You can see that it just starts to give that roundness. And see when it moves, the separation on the ends? Because we've got that underneath shape and that top shape. Pretty simple stuff here, you know, things that I think you can do every day in the salon. You know, I'm never trying to say, oh, let's come up with something crazy that you can never do. I still work with clients every month, and everything that I share, everything that I teach are things, I think I could go a little bit higher here. I feel like I need a little more hair. Are things that I use on my own clients. And, you know, we're seeing it more and more, at least for me. I'm seeing requests for texture all the time, different ways of getting the hair to move. So, you know, I think that dry cutting is more than just kind of a trend. I mean, obviously for many of us, it's part of our whole process where we maybe start wet, we cut in a shape, we cut in a balance, we cut in a line, then we dry the hair, perhaps flat iron it, or maybe dry it natural, it really depends. And then we start to carve into it. Now, you know, or some people just do the whole thing dry all the time, which I think is also quite interesting. And I do that from time to time as well. But very often what I'm looking to do is take something that's got maybe a little bit more of, shall we call it a traditional shape, that's perhaps been cut wet or damp, and then kind of refine it.
Charmaine is mentioning that she loves this technique.
Great, I'm glad.
Oh, she's from South Africa, and she's saying hello and thank you for your lives.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks to Pivot Point for the ongoing sponsorship and giving us great mannequins to work with, like the Lana here. And for being, and I say this every single time, so if you've watched a lot, you know, one of the other reasons why I'm proud to work with Pivot Point is they're an ethical company. Mannequins, you know, you can get them anywhere. You can Google it. You can look on Amazon. You can find them cheap and cheerful. Number one, the quality. You get that $20 mannequin, I guarantee you the quality, it might not even be hair, it's probably synthetic or some type of animal hair. But number two, it wasn't sourced or created ethically. There's a lot that goes into the hair business and the collecting of the hair and the way that the workers are treated. And I think, you know, again, in our world, we vote with our dollars. So if you want to support brands that do things ethically, check out Pivot Point. If you go to their website, you can see videos about how they treat their employees all over the world, how they source hair. It's a big deal. Now, all of that obviously is the icing on the cake. It's the quality of the mannequins, you know, because as someone who's taught many, many classes, sometimes using great Pivot Point mannequins and sometimes using poor, cheap mannequins and cheap tripods, I guarantee you that the quality of that class, the quality of that practice, that session goes way down when the quality of the mannequins goes way down. And the tripods. You know, a bad tripod can be like a nightmare. All right, so this top's already been quite layered. That was the area that was technically layered. But it's kind of very nondescript around the face. So I want to start to work with this hair falling forward. I'm going to use a triangle here and then another one around it in just a moment. And again, I want to create that overlap. And you can see Lupe's got this beautiful two different hues of this kind of orangey color. And I want to, right now you can almost barely see the underneath one. Yeah? So first thing I'm going to do is again, come from the top to collapse and remove. And then we'll do some detail from there. So coming in, lifting this up and out. Thinking about where I want my shortest point to be. Let's say it's going to be here. Open and close without closing all the way. And drop it down to about lip level. Now we're starting to see a mixture within those hues.
What is the point of moving the section as you're cutting it?
You know, it kind of shuffles the hair as it's being cut. So again, it makes it less blunt, less linear, and it gives you different amounts of weight. So when you're higher, you can take more weight out. When you're higher, you can be more gentle, believe it or not. Because when you're higher like that, the hair is spread out a bit more. So you can start off just working on the surface, being very, very gentle. And as you start to drop it down, the hair collapses and folds in on itself. So you can cut almost all the way through the hair. So again, now starting to see some of the color, less of the solidity that was here. And again, now back into the detailing. Obviously, this can be done at different lengths. I figured, keep it, since there's so much beautiful color here, I don't want to cut it all off, at least not yet. We'll get a few haircuts out of this mannequin. Again, just working on the surface here. Very little pressure. Just carving to bring in pops of that color. So yes, this is a dry cutting scissor. So it does this really, really nicely because it pushes the hair as it cuts. Hopefully you can see that. It doesn't pull the hair in and cut it solidly. It pushes it out and cuts it in a nice soft way. Do you need a dry cutting scissor? No. It's just a little bit harder without it. You have to just be more delicate with it.
Elizabeth is mentioning about her experience with using a cheaper mannequin that it had egg lice in it, nits.
Oh, that's terrible.
And she had to throw it away. It was grossed out. And then to mention, you have to clean all your supplies and your tools.
Yikes.
Yes.
Well, we've come a long way.
Elizabeth.
We've come a long way, and you can get really great quality stuff in all kinds of tools and mannequins, and it just really makes a difference. It does, and if you're respecting the educator, respecting yourself, it might cost $50 more, but that $50 more is going to make your lesson just so much better.
Well, and hopefully you can get a couple of haircuts out of it as well as color too.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Charmaine is wondering, do you recommend different scissors for different techniques? I only use one and not sure if she should use different ones.
I mean, yeah. So it's like it's personal choice. So there's a lot more variety now than there was years ago. There's different scissors that have different shapes and they're sharpened in different ways. Dry cutting scissors, you see how wide body the blade is and how it curves. So this is the most obvious because it's different from what you would normally see. The idea is it pushes the hair as it cuts. Believe it or not, I don't have another scissor in my kit, but you can see the difference. These are very, very wide, and then they curve into the center. So that really is, the concept of what a dry cutting scissor is, to push the hair as you cut. It's like they call it bamboo leaf. And there's many variations. There's even hybrids that have it a little bit. So they're good for wet and dry, different lengths of scissor, different types of handles. It's really personal choice. I don't think, again, as I say all the time, there's not right and wrong. I'm always skeptical of people who say this is the right way, the proper way, you must do it this way. I've been doing this now for 31 years, and every time I've believed that, I've been proven wrong. As soon as I believed it, I was like, this is the way it has to be done. This is the right way. Then I woke up the next day and it's like something automatically showed me that, well, wow, look, there's a totally different way to do it and it looks great. Now on this top piece, I'm doing a little bit of both. I came from the top and I'm also gonna come from the bottom. So what that's gonna do is make this top almost like a little icicle, right? Because it's got hair pushing from the top and the bottom. So I'm taking those layers that were already here, and just kind of refining them, a little bit of both, and just getting that more movement, more separation into the whole shape. Gives a little bit more texture, separation, but you can see overall the length and the layers didn't get a lot shorter, and look at how much hair is on the floor. So that's another reason why this type of hair cutting can be so salon friendly, because a lot of times, it's what people, so they want to change, they want it to feel different, look different, but they don't want to cut a little length off, they don't want a lot more layers. It's like the hairdresser's lament, right? And I think a lot of times, we just automatically go with what we know and say, oh, I can't do that, I have to do this, I have to do that. And sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. Okay, so I've done one side, the what we would call the light side of the parting. Just get my tripod balanced. Now, we've got the heavier side of the parting. I've already done the bang. I like the way it's exposing that color. So it's really just this area that's left. Now this is kind of very delicate, and this is where I really would be working in the mirror. Since I don't have a mirror, I'll probably just cut a little bit and then come around to look. So again, working on the top. I'm gonna come around, Cal, if you don't mind. I'm gonna come around this way. Okay. You know, the previous haircut was a very kind of basic layer. So there was more layering on the light side of the parting. So I'm actually addressing it differently, just visually. It doesn't need quite as much on the top. It'll need, I think, a lot on the bottom of this bit, but it already has more layering because it was cut symmetrically. So this side doesn't need a lot off the top, which is fairly common. So I feel I'm looking at the layering on the top. It's almost like I can put a little more on the light side, even with what's already there, which is very, very common with partings. And you know, I think if you're gonna work dry, you definitely wanna work as much with the natural movement and the natural fall of the hair as you can. Now I do think this is gonna need a bit more. It's gonna be very, very solid on the underneath. So as I lift this up, can let that nice darker hue for the most part fall out. And this is where I'm gonna need the most work. I'm not even gonna go all the way to the ends. I'm just focusing right here where I wanna get that curvature happening like we have it over here. Now back here, it's, you know, right at this point, this hair is almost one length. You know, if anything, I want to encourage you. This whole series is called Professionals Who Practice. So, you know, if you haven't done this kind of hair cutting, or you think it's bad or it's wrong, or maybe you like it but you're afraid of it, or get a great mannequin and try for yourself. You never know where it's going to lead you. There's been plenty of times when I've been shown something where right away I'm like, oh, that's not right. I wouldn't do it that way. And then something in my head says, well, let me just see what happens if I do. Now, very rarely do I do that on a client. I do that in a practice session on a mannequin. And sometimes I start doing it and something else happens. Like my brain says, oh, push it this way or pull it that way. And that's the beauty of being able to practice, you know, coming up with something of your own. I say in every class that I teach, hopefully I can come back here 2 years from now, and whatever I showed you, you've changed into something completely different of your own. It's got to start somewhere, and that's really for me, what it comes down to. So lifting up now and slicing from the underneath again in mini slices. Again, a lot of what I'm doing here, and this gets thrown around a lot in hairdressing, is a feeling. You have to have a good basic grasp of hair to then be able to trust your feelings, to trust your eyes. It's like a little lightning bolt that goes from your eyes to your brain back to your hands. And until you get to the point where you feel comfortable and confident with that, you know, cutting like this can be unworkable. Not to say that people don't do it, you know, because it seems like in a lot of ways an easier way to do things. You know, for everything to be perfectly symmetrical and lined up and controlled section by section. And then you look at something like this and you go, well, that seems like it's a lot easier. And in a lot of regards it is, but it's not easier to do well. It's just easier to do, but not easier to do well. Using a little bit more of that texturizing serum. And again, all about the movement to see the color expression from what Lupe did. Again, if you want to see how she did this on this beautiful Lana mannequin, incredible mannequin for hair color because it's already pre-lightened to a nice, I don't know the exact level, but let's just say it's like a 10. It's pretty light. You wouldn't need to get it any lighter to play with creative toning, creative applications at all. I'll come around one more time there to see how my balance is.
Yeah, Danielle's mentioning he loves it. It looks great. Angela's loving the shape. Thank you, everyone. Angela's also loving the color.
Yeah, again, if you want to see this color, it was done with Color Space Hair Color by Lupe Voss. It was done just on Thursday. So all you have to do is go to Hairbrain's Facebook page, which you're easily on, and look under our live button. And it's got all the lives that we've ever done, literally hundreds and hundreds by great artists all over the world. This was colored just last week. We've probably got about 25 or 30 lessons from Lupe over the years, so there's so much to learn there.
This lesson, this color in particular, was labeled Saturation of Hue.
Saturation of hue. Always makes me think of Larry David, right? Hue. All right, guys, I think I've made my meal here. I think I've got it. Again, look, I just want you to see how much hair is on the floor from when we started. Not a lot shorter, didn't add a lot of layers in a conventional sense, but totally transformed. I want to thank my friends at Pivot Point for creating incredible tools for us to use. The tripod, this is the universal tripod. Mannequins like the Lana, as well as the dozens of others that they have. I want to encourage you all to be a professional who practices. It'll make a huge difference in your career. All right, peace out.